In today's fight news, we start off with the UFC 300 press conference, in which former light heavyweight champion Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill pretty much stole the show, as he had plenty to say to his main event opponent, champion Alex Pereira. Here's a few things Hill had to say during the press event. He's a 2-division Glory champion, 2-division UFC champion, kickboxing great, hands of stone, bad man, just a monster, dangerous, scary dude. He's all those things, but watch what I do to him. Javi went off on Pereira. At the end, this is what he had to say. When you step in there with me, ain't nothing to talk about, ain't nothing to say. It's all right here, and I'm on your ass. Speaking of the main event of UFC 300, middleweight champion Dricus du Plessis had this to say while speaking to Shadowband. Both of them don't like me, I've realized, so I would love a double knockout. Pereira, obviously, because I would smoke his ass, and I beat his boy Strickland. Alex is big. Alex hits hard. Times have changed, man. That's going to be a very interesting fight. Moving on to the BMF title fight between champion Justin Gaethje and former featherweight champion Max Holloway. Both fighters were promising fireworks for their much-anticipated showdown. On that note, it looks like Holloway is going to get his wish, as UFC President Dana White announced that UFC legend and Hall of Famer Mark Coleman will be the one who's going to wrap the belt around the winner of the matchup. Speaking of the UFC president, Dana White was asked if he's going to do any changes to the performance bonuses for the monumental UFC 300 card, in which he eventually agreed to $300,000 for each winner. After which, both fighters and fans went crazy in excitement. Not long after White announced the $300K bonuses, superstar Conor McGregor took to his X account to congratulate both the fighters and UFC president Dana White for doing such a thing. Speaking of Dana White, the UFC president told the Sports Business Journal that they're expecting the UFC 300 event to do over 1 million pay-per-view buys on ESPN+. During the media day, White was asked if there will be a different color to the octagon canvas, in which he said blue. Not sure if that's true or not, but UFC 200 did have a yellow canvas. White also took the opportunity to announce that the UFC will be going back to Manchester, England this July. There's not a set date, but rumors are the 20th or the 27th. Speaking of taking the opportunity, welterweight standout Joaquin Buckley crashed the UFC 300 event, in which he asked Dana White if he'll put himself on the headliner for the St. Louis event, since he is from St. Louis, and the current headliner, Derek Lewis, openly states that he doesn't like fighting 5-round fights. It looks like we could have had former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya versus current champ Dricus du Plessis as the main event, as rumored. This comes from Adesanya's manager Tim Simpson while he was on an episode of the MMA Hour. He stated, Israel Adesanya really wanted to fight at UFC 300. He was upset. He loves big moments. Title fight comeback, that one came down to the wire, down to within a few hours before they announced Jamal Hill and Alex Pereira. I was texting Hunter Campbell and couldn't get it done on Dricus' side, but Izzy was ready to go. Speaking of the rivals Adesanya and du Plessis, both fighters will be attendants at the UFC 300 card. Max Holloway's manager, Tim Simpson, also said that his fighter, Max, really wants a crack at the newly crowned featherweight king, Ilia Topuria. While on the MMA Hour, he had this to say. He really wants to fight Ilia. He feels like he's going to whoop him. That's Max's words. He'd do it anywhere. Simpson also stated that his fighter, welterweight champion Leon Edwards, had all but agreed to fight Khamzat Chimaev for the main event at UFC 300, but for whatever reason, Khamzat declined. Here's what he had to say. That's what they were working on. For whatever reason, it couldn't come together. He said Ramadan and weight and everything. They have to fight whether Leon goes up to 185 or whatever. This is the 5th time he's agreed to fight him. Leon very much favors his chances. It looks like welterweight top 5 contender Belal Muhammad isn't a fan of Leon's manager, Tim. Speaking of Leon Edwards and his coach, welterweight top 5 contender Belal Muhammad had this to say on X. Leon, his manager, his coach, his brother, all beep chiz. There's been a recent back and forth between former featherweight king Max Holloway and current lightweight champion Islam Makhachev, because Max called out Islam for saying that he couldn't get a fight, in which Max said that he should have picked a fight. He had plenty of time before Ramadan. The lightweight champ clapped back on X, stating, "For the record, since 2021, I fought 7 times, while Holloway did 5 fights and Justin just 4. Do your homework before talking trash about your champ." Max responded back on X with a cheeky reply, "Never said you weren't active. I simply said you should have took the February fight if you wanted to keep busy. Don't just read headlines, champ." The lightweight champion was also seen on X trolling the former interim lightweight champion, Dustin the Diamond Poirier, after Poirier had made a tweet saying, "See you soon," which was directed at the current champ, in which Islam responded 0-3, alluding to this'll be the 3rd time Poirier is going for a title shot and he'll lose again. While on an episode of the MMA Hour, head coach Eric Nixick had this to say about his fighter, UFC former middleweight champion Sean Strickland. "I know why he fights. I know who he fights for. He fights for that little kid inside of him that he couldn't protect. He'll fight anybody and everybody in the world for that little guy who's in here touching his chest. As a coach, you gotta know who and what your fighter is fighting for." Speaking of Strickland, his likely future opponent, Paulo Costa, posted this on X. "Cancel that fight, I'm out," in regards to a questionable picture Strickland posted on his social media account. Lastly, we finished with a few fight announcements. Cody Durbin out of his matchup against Carlos Hernandez that was scheduled for UFC 303 on June 29th. Middleweights Punahele Soriano and Miguel Baeza will face off on June 8th. And it looks like the bantamweights Raul Rosas Jr. and Ricky Turcios will finally face off also on the June 8th card. UFC 308 has finally been announced, which will take place in Abu Dhabi on October 26th.